During the campaign, Donald Trump said he'd put Hillary Clinton in jail. Now it appears he may be giving her a get-out-of-jail-free card. This is Special Report. Good evening and welcome to Washington. I'm Doug McKelway in for Brett Baird. Donald Trump won the presidency in large part by vilifying Hillary Clinton. He called her Crooked Hillary, and his followers jubilantly chanted, "Lock her up." Now Trump may be doing a major reversal, suggesting he may not pursue any criminal charges. His latest backtrack from a fundamental campaign position. We have team coverage tonight of the Trump transition. Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon with a look at the president-elect's relationship with the military and his pursuit of a defense secretary. But we begin with correspondent Peter Ducey at Trump Tower tonight and what appears to be a clean slate for his vanquished opponent. Good evening, Peter.
Good evening, Doug. The president-elect admitted today that pressing charges against Hillary Clinton could be divisive for the country. But Mr. Trump, whose supporters have been known to chant "lock her up," also says that prosecution is still a possibility. This afternoon at the New York Times headquarters in Manhattan, Donald Trump explained to print reporters why he'd be hesitant as president to continue probing Hillary Clinton's possibly illegal behavior as Secretary of State. One Times writer present quotes the president-elect as saying that my inclination would be for whatever power I have on the matter is to say, let's go forward. This has been looked at for so long ad nauseum. Another posted this quote attributed to Mr. Trump, I don't want to hurt the Clintons. I really don't. She went through a lot and suffered greatly in many different ways. That empathy for his former Democratic opponent represents a major departure from what he said to her face in the final stretch of the campaign.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
One of Trump's most visible surrogates, Rudy Giuliani, says he would still support an investigation into Clinton, but that he understands where the president-elect is coming from.
Look, there's a tradition in American politics that after you win an election, you sort of put things behind you.
But critics are having a hard time stomaching the president-elect's second-guessing.
Well, so much for locking her up, I guess. The bottom line is that I think the Clintons' foundation, the whole mess needs to be looked at with an independent view, not a political agenda.
Last night, Trump's transition team posted a YouTube video where the president-elect laid out his initial agenda.
Our transition team is working very smoothly.
On his list, withdrawing from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, cleaning up the visa system, and adding cybersecurity measures. But notably not on the list, renegotiating NAFTA, banning Muslims from entering the country, or building a wall. A spokesman said today the 2.5-minute clip was just of things for the first day. Back at Trump Tower, Mr. Trump continued meeting with candidates for administration posts. Today it was Congressman Cynthia Lummis from Wyoming, Dr. Seema Verma, CEO of a health policy company, and Dr. Ben Carson. Mr. Trump tweeted, quote, I am seriously considering Dr. Ben Carson as the head of HUD. I've gotten to know him well. He is a greatly talented person who loves people.
Has it been offered, sir?
We have had offers, yes.
And is it the HUD position?
I would say that was one of the offers that's on the table.
Right now, the president-elect is on his plane on his way to his Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach for Thanksgiving with family. And when he gets back, we expect high-profile cabinet positions that still haven't been filled, which is basically all of them, to start getting filled. Doug?
Peter Ducey, just outside of Trump Tower. Thank you, Peter. Trump seems to be focusing on former military flag officers to run the Pentagon, and he is already laying out his initial battle plan. National security correspondent Jennifer Griffin has that story tonight from the Pentagon.
In a 2.5-minute overview, President-elect Donald Trump told Pentagon leaders what their marching orders will be on day one of his presidency.
On national security, I will ask the Department of Defense and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to develop a comprehensive plan to protect America's vital infrastructure from cyber attacks and all other form of attacks.
During the campaign, the Clinton team used Trump's words against him in campaign ads and debate talking points.
I know more about ISIS than the generals do, believe me.
Now, President-elect Trump is turning to many of those generals to solve the country's biggest problems and to potentially run several government agencies. He tapped former three-star Army General Mike Flynn to be his national security advisor and appears set to break tradition by appointing a retired four-star Marine General, James Mattis, to lead the Pentagon. Another recently retired four-star Marine General, John Kelly, is being considered to run the Department of Homeland Security. Admiral Mike Rogers, who currently serves as head of the NSA, is still on active duty with the Navy and was interviewed to be the Director of National Intelligence. He currently oversees U.S. Cyber Command. For the next administration, cyber warfare and cyber defense will be a top priority. Many experts have warned for years that America's critical infrastructure, its power grid, banking system, and transportation grid are vulnerable to cyber attacks that could cripple the nation.
This is an evolving threat, a challenging threat, and one thing the Secretary wants to make sure is that it's a threat that we continue to address and adjust our own posture accordingly.
Former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta raised eyebrows in 2011 during his confirmation hearing when he warned about the possibility of a cyber Pearl Harbor. U.S. officials convinced the public in 2003 that a blackout in the northeast of the United States was caused by a downed power line, when in fact many experts believe it was the result of a cyber attack that resulted in 11 deaths and $6 billion in damages, disrupting power for 2 days.
Another priority for the Trump administration, according to those familiar with his national security thinking, will be to escalate the fight against ISIS and simultaneously rebuild the military after 15 years of nonstop war, an expensive proposition at a time of ever-shrinking budgets and concerns about skyrocketing deficits. Doug?
Jennifer Griffin from the Pentagon. Thank you, Jennifer. Let's talk more now about Donald Trump's relationship with the news media. Fox News digital politics editor Chris Steyerwalt joins us now. Chris, this is truly one of the more unusual moves we've seen in the transition. Mr. Trump yesterday calling these high-ranking executives and influential anchors from all the leading networks to Trump Tower for a meeting. And as a wise writer once said, they thought they were coming in for a haircut, but they came away with their throats slit. What's behind this strategy by Trump?
Well, every president-elect throughout history, or at least the history of the modern mass media, has the love-hate relationship with the press. You want to get your message out. You want people to hear what you're saying in the broadest possible way, but also, of course, you don't want the story shaped in a way that's not flattering to you. So what the president has to offer the press as an inducement is access. If you're nice, if you're fair, if you treat me the way that I think I ought to be treated, then I'll let you in. I will give briefings. I will hold press conferences. I will let you follow me around. And if you don't, I'll cut off access. Right. We certainly saw this with President Obama and his predecessors.
And then Trump shortly thereafter released a video outlining his first executive actions as a president. This is not the first administration, obviously, that has excoriated the press and then tried to bypass the press. You mentioned the Obama administration.
The great hope, the great and persistent hope of every president is to be able to go around the press and talk over the heads of the people here inside the Washington bubble to the broader electorate. Get your message out. Now, Barack Obama tried that at the beginning of his presidency using YouTube videos and other things. He said he was going to talk directly to voters, but in reality, in the end, he needed mass media to get the message out, and he had to come up with, though at times challenging and at times contentious, some sort of a working arrangement with the reporters who cover him.
But this is a more advanced digital age right now. We're seeing this balkanization of reporting where people are picking out the news outlets that conform to their views. Can he bypass the press in the way he might be signaling?
I think to a greater degree than President Obama, and certainly when it comes to keeping his base engaged. I think what you will see from President Trump when he is in office is, yes, to continue to wage his war with the mainstream press, but also to use his social media presence and use favored outlets like Breitbart and others that have curried favor with him and are even part of his administration indirectly, that those folks will carry the message to the core supporters. The challenge for every president, though, isn't how do you talk to your core, it's how do you spread your message to a larger audience and get results.
And then came today's meeting with the New York Times at the New York Times building, which Trump initially canceled, tweeting, "I canceled today's meeting," with a failing at New York Times when the terms and conditions of the meeting were changed at the last moment. Not nice. And then he rescheduled a meeting at the New York Times building.
It's quite a game of chicken they're playing, isn't it? The press needs Trump, and they need access to cover him. Trump needs the press, but he doesn't like their coverage. So he's playing this game of chicken about how far can he go in assailing and condemning the establishment press, while at the same time getting the coverage that he needs. And I think today's meeting was a reflection of that.
In the meantime, the public editor of the New York Times recently wrote that the paper and the media were too tough on Trump supporters. And this is a quote: "The media is at fault, too, for turning his remarks into a grim caricature that it applied to those who backed him." And to that point, the media outlets are